This is D with Divine L, and I hope you all are doing fantastic on this beautiful, beautiful Saturday. When I looked over at the time, when I first started recording this, it was 11:11. The I had an echo on the recording, and I thought I might have, so I'm redoing it now. But 11:11 means you're on the right path. It's the divine speaking to you, trying to get your attention. Anyway, I barely glanced over the edge of the Cathar back in a video a long time ago. And now is the time to really delve in. This is Revelations. We are living in the time of the book of Revelations, the age of Aquarius, the age of enlightenment, the apocalypse, where all things that were once hidden are brought to light. And it is an amazing time to be incarnated on this planet right now. Ringside seats. Like I always say, get your organic popcorn. Ringside seats, indeed. Anyway, I want to talk about a little bit about what I have talked about in the past for those of you that have not been privy to some of those past streams. I talked about visiting a counselor at my daughter's request. She thought I was losing my mind because of past life memories and the stuff I talk about. Even though she's had experiences herself. hmm And I thought it was a delightful idea because it would make it very easy to walk away from the mission if I was crazy. And I could just chalk it up to, okay, it is what it is, right? Oh, unfortunately, no matter what I told the counselor, I told him everything. Told him about Gabriel and Adonai. Told him everything. Everything I've told you guys on the streams. He told me I wasn't crazy. No signs of psychosis whatsoever. It would seem that many of you feel compelled that you have some sort of mission on this planet. Some of you are just awakening to that fact. hmm Some of you might be like me and have memories of past lives. Some of them little tiny glimpses, and others a little more detailed. Here's the thing. I've talked about this many times. You all incarnate in the same family lines. hmm And here's another thing I've told you all many times. They knew we were coming. Yeah, they did. They knew it. Because there are factions on this planet that know damn well we reincarnate in the same family lines. hmm the Cathars. The Cathars were an extension of Mary Magdalene's church. She started it. And what's interesting is Rome, the Vatican, who claims to worship the Holy Spirit, the Mother, tried to kill off the very church she started. And it's like I always tell you, you must ask why. Never stop asking why. Why would they try to kill the very religion she started and yet profess to worship her? Let that rattle around in your head for a while. Never stop asking. You know, it's funny because when I told my daughter, well, I've told him everything and he doesn't think I'm crazy. Of course, the next logical step was, oh, he must be crazy. Really? I went on your request and you don't like the answer you heard. She's awakening though. She's had a lot of experiences. It's because she is my daughter, including E.T., the same E.T.s I've had experiences with. One particular race, very small blue beings that are highly benevolent. Anyway, I digress a little bit, but I'm also trying to catch up people that aren't up to speed. Anyway, I'm going to share a few things with you all today. More revelations. And I have a dove sitting here in my yard that just flew by the window to get my attention. You'll understand why that happened in a moment. The divine speaks to us in many ways, or through us in many ways. Like my angel friend, Miss Melody of Oracle of the Crows, who set me back on the path of the Cathars. Because it's time for me to talk about that now. Because it is the year of the Cathars' return. 2021. This is a picture of the Cathars being slaughtered by those that hunted them, the Catholic Church, the Vatican. Always remember, I'm not talking about the good Catholic people. I'm talking about Rome and the evil that's laying there. That evil has been going on for a very long time. But what a lot of people don't realize is your gods are ETs. And there's a particularly nasty one that's been in control of the Vatican for entirely too long. Anyway, I'm going to share these things with you. And I'm not going to redo the work of others. I want to bring to the forefront the very good work of others. I do hope that you visit the channels that I'm going to bring forward and investigate things a little deeper for yourselves. It's like I've always said, you don't have to take my word for it. I want you to go look for yourselves. So, we're going to go on this trail, and I hope you enjoy the information. I know you'll find it enlightening. It is the apocalypse, after all. So here we go with the first one. This is It Might Be Possible. They only have 841 subscribers. So if you haven't and feel so inclined, I wish you would subscribe to their channel. And the others I'm going to be presenting here. Here we go. Down the rabbit hole. Alice in Wonderland.
The Cathars were a Christian sect who thrived in the 12th century in southern Europe. They believed in reincarnation, and while they also believed in heaven, they did not believe in hell. For the Cathars, souls are eternal. As they said, we are all divine sparks, even angels, imprisoned in tunics of flesh. These divine sparks are reincarnated into different bodies again and again until the spirit is ready for the ultimate heavenly ascension. And this privilege was not reserved only for the righteous. They believed all souls would eventually find their place in heaven, even the souls of animals. For this reason, they practiced a vegetarian diet. In many ways, their beliefs aligned closely with Hinduism and Buddhism, in which multiple lives spent on this earth contribute to the eventual goal of an ascension to eternal bliss. The Cathars saw their views as an older and purer form of Christianity, much aligned with the Gnostics, yet at odds with their popular contemporaries, the Catholic Church, who set forth to eliminate the Cathars by violent means. Throughout the 13th century, virtually all of the Cathars were hanged or burned at the hands of the Catholic Church, starting with a brutal inquisition in the south of France in 1244. What few remained were forced to go into hiding. Yet, in accordance with their beliefs, evidence suggests the Cathars did not die easy. Tales of their reincarnation have endured the centuries since their unjust demise, with one case in particular providing such a wealth of specific information, it is hard to deny the possibility of their recurring lives on this earth. Dr. Arthur Gurdam was a well-respected psychiatrist and author practicing in Bath, England. One afternoon in 1962, a housewife in her early 30s, named only in his writings as Mrs. Smith, entered his office. Mrs. Smith had been suffering from terrifying nightmares, one in particular which featured a shadowy figure approaching her from behind while she was lying down. Although he did not mention it to Mrs. Smith until months later, Dr. Gurdam had been suffering from almost the exact same nightmare for 30 years. But within weeks of their meeting, neither would ever have the nightmare again. Gurdam was certainly intrigued by the dream connection, but he was more impressed by the precise descriptions Mrs. Smith was able to conjure of medieval France, seemingly out of thin air. He continued seeing her and quickly surmised that she showed no signs of mental illness. When she was a 13-year-old English schoolgirl, Mrs. Smith began writing down highly specific details, names, and events she received in lucid, lifelike visions of another life. There is nothing unusual about teenage girls imagining fanciful lives in faraway times and places, but Mrs. Smith's accounts were extraordinary because she wrote them out in perfect medieval French, specifically in the dialect native to the region occupied by the Cathars. At one point in 1944, she wrote out the full lyrics to an obscure medieval song, which exactly matched verses uncovered in a French archive 23 years later. Mrs. Smith had never taken French lessons, let alone medieval French, And during her childhood in the 1940s, it would have been impossible for a young girl to find this kind of information on her own. Impressed with the specific nature of her visions, Gurdam began scouring history books and reaching out to scholars to see if he could find any evidence that her visions were true. In the 1960s, obtaining this sort of obscure historical information was a long and arduous task, but Gurdam was determined. One of his first achievements was to verify a long list of names Mrs. Smith had provided from her visions. Gurdam was able to identify the specific names listed by Mrs. Smith only because of the Catholic Inquisition. They kept impeccable records of the Cathars as they attempted to eliminate the heretic sect. These records, written in French, were kept under lock and key in a private archive, which would have been absolutely inaccessible to Mrs. Smith. Furthermore, she was able to describe the relationships between the people she named, and other specific details which would later be verified. Another recollection that particularly impressed Gurdam was Mrs. Smith's insistence that the Cathars wore blue robes, a fact which she had been sure of since 1944. Every single historical account of the Cathars described them as wearing black robes. It wasn't until 1965, 3 years after Mrs. Smith had told Gurdam about the blue robes, that a new book revealed the Cathars did in fact wear robes of this color. Her notes also contained accurately drawn coins and jewelry from the era, as well as maps which depicted the Cathar village in the Toulouse region, where the Inquisition would commit its most atrocious acts. In 1967, Gurdam traveled to the south of France to further investigate Mrs. Smith's visions. By traversing the region she described so specifically, and by accessing Cathar documents that were only available at a local archive, he was able to corroborate impossibly obscure details from her past life writings. For Gurdam, the confirmation of these details proved beyond a doubt that her recollections were real. What's more, Mrs. Smith would eventually reveal that Gurdam was a Cathar in his past life as well, which would explain their shared dream. Mrs. Smith's past incarnation was eventually burned at the stake for her beliefs, an event she was forced to relive in a terrifying vision. As she wrote to Gurdam, "I didn't know when you were burnt to death you'd bleed. I thought the blood would all dry up in the terrible heat, but I was bleeding heavily. The blood was dripping and hissing in the flames. I wished I had enough blood to put the flames out." Beyond all belief, over the years, Gurdam would end up finding 9 more reincarnated Cathars in the town of Bath. Skeptics have claimed that he was leading his suggestible patients, as he became more and more obsessed with his own tale of reincarnation. And while this is certainly a valid cause of concern, some extraordinary evidence remains. Another one of his patients produced a sketchbook from when she was 7 years old, which contained drawings depicting a Cathar village and specific names of the villagers, which were again verified. As Gurdam wrote, "It's beyond me how a 7-year-old child could know these names, when I shouldn't think there was an expert in medieval history in England at the time who knew them." Furthermore, Gurdam did not use drugs or hypnosis techniques to coerce these recollections, 2 common methods used to implant or suggest memories. In fact, all of these visions appeared to his patients during lucid states of being. In his book, The Cathars and Reincarnation, Gurdam goes into incredible detail about the past lives of his patients, as well as his own, corroborating visions and recollections of the group in Bath with historical records from 13th century France. Gurdam repeatedly mentions the fact that he had no interest in reincarnation or any supernatural phenomena before his encounter with Mrs. Smith, identifying himself as extremely skeptical by nature. He was a successful psychiatrist, and his obsession with the reincarnated Cathars did no favors for his career. However, the details and specific visions he witnessed from his patients were too compelling to ignore. As he said, "With 40 years' experience in medicine, it is either that I know the difference between a clairvoyance experience and a schizophrenic one, or I am a psychotic myself. None of the people in my group is mad in any way, and none of my colleagues have found me psychotic." It is impossible to ever know for sure whether Gurdam and his Cathars represented a legitimate case of group reincarnation or something more mundane. Skeptics maintain the doctor must have been guilty of some fabrication of the facts. Yet the evidence is stunning when examined objectively, and it makes an interesting addition to the growing body of scientific research into reincarnation. Dr. Ian Stevenson, former chair of psychiatry at the University of Virginia, has collected and published hundreds of cases in which children remembered specific details of their past lives. Often these details are verified through investigation and documentation, in the same way Gurdam verified his own cases. In cultures which readily believe in reincarnation, tales of past lives are common. In Tibet, the Dalai Lama regularly reincarnates into a new physical body. In the West, however, these claims are met with extreme skepticism, partially due to a materialist scientific worldview, and partially due to the dominance of the same strains of Christianity responsible for massacring the Cathars in the first place. Perhaps if more doctors and scientists followed Gurdam's path, investigating the extraordinary, even when it violates our preconceived beliefs, we could find answers to the greatest mysteries of our existence.
I hope you enjoyed that. Strangely familiar for me. Very much so. You know, they're talking about them being burned alive. So I wanted to, I think I brought this up in another stream about my husband and I were out taking a walk, and there's a dog food factory nearby. And the wind just happened to be blowing the right direction, and I could smell it. Where they cook down animals for the food. And I told him, I said, I've never smelled a crematorium before in my life. But that smell brought back memories. I believe I did bring that up in a stream in the past. Talked about a lot of things in the past. I want to share another video with you. Amazing.
Hello, I'm Theolyn Cortens. Welcome to Signs and Wonders. Today's topic is about prophecy. I can imagine that I could actually run quite a few of these videos on the topic of prophecy, but this particular one was prompted because I recently came across a prophecy which I'd never seen before. It's quite perhaps an unusual one that you may not have come across. And this prophecy was made by a man who was burnt at the stake in 1321. His name was Guillaume Bellibost. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. He was a Cathar. And if you know anything about Cathars, the Catholic Church hounded them for their heretical ideas, what the Catholic Church considered to be heretical, and over a period of a couple of centuries they were gradually, their movement was gradually destroyed, and I think it was in the 1200s that there was a mass burning, but then a few of them were living on, and this man didn't die until 1321. And what he said was, I'm going to get my note paper so I get the quotation right. In 700 years, the Laurel will become green again, and the good people will return. Now, 700 years from 1321, of course, is 2021, and that was why it caught my eye. Now, the Cathars called themselves parfait, perfect people, good people, and they were wanting to follow the Gospels of Jesus that weren't necessarily accepted by the church. They were called the Gnostic Gospels. And so they had a very particular way of thinking about how you should be, quote, good. They had particular theology, and the Catholic Church didn't agree with the way they thought about it. And the Catholic Church wanted everybody to go through the priesthood of Catholicism, and the Cathars didn't believe that you needed to do that. So that was why they were, not regarded as proper people, because they weren't baptized in the usual way. They weren't accepting the Mass and all the rituals of the Roman Catholic Church. So perhaps, the Catholic Church was justified, they thought, in just wiping them out, destroying them. It takes your breath away, really, when you think about it. To come back to the prophecy, I was intrigued by it because of the 700 years. And I looked at astrological stuff. I thought, well, is there any connection with 2021 and 1321 astrologically? And I couldn't see anything particular that jumped out at me. I noticed that a Jupiter was in the sign of Aquarius at that time, and that's just about going to happen again. But none of the other planets were doing anything similar to how they're going to be happening in the coming year. So one wonders where his 700 years comes from, whether it's just some kind of prophetic inspiration of some kind. But certainly the Aquarian conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn that's coming up does suggest a new possibility. But then there have been lots of other new possibilities in between 1321 and 2021, including the Protestant Reformation, which was a big one. And the Cathars were not Protestants in that sense, but although they were protesting about the Catholic Church. So one wonders where such a prophecy comes from, and we have them throughout history. And are they meaningful? Are they going to tell us anything? And the last occasion where a lot of stuff was going on around a prediction was 2012. And I myself wrote a book based on the channeling I've been doing with Nephilim, which was called The Teachings of the Nephilim 2012 and Beyond. And in that book, I investigated, what is the meaning of this change that's predicted in the Mayan calendar. It's obviously not going to be, I didn't ever think it was going to be like, this is the end of the world in the pragmatic sense of the end of the world. But certainly since 2012, an enormous amount of change has happened at a phenomenal pace of time that makes one feel that one has entered into a new kind of dynamic about what it is potentially to be a human being. But let's go back to Guillaume. What does he say? The laurel will become green again. Well, this is perhaps a metaphor for heroism, because a laurel leaf is what you put on the head of the hero. It's a green crown of laurel. So perhaps he chose the word laurel to say that the heroic martyrdom of the Cathars would somehow be recognised in some ways, and the Gnosticism that they were preaching would have a revival of some kind. Now, there is a revival of Catharism. There are modern people who practice what the Cathars believed in. You can find them on the internet. And perhaps, they're taking their lead from what happened to those people and what those people believed about Jesus and about spirituality generally. So the good people that he's talking about could particularly be more Cathars being reincarnated, perhaps, and coming again and spreading the word again. For me, the good people don't necessarily have to belong to any particular religion. The, quote, good people, perhaps I would use the word the heart-feeling people, because I don't think labelling people as good or bad, or I certainly don't believe in using the word evil, except under very extreme circumstances, because most people are kind of shades on a spectrum of white to black. Most of us live somewhere along that spectrum. So I don't think any particular people would warrant being called the good people. But heartfelt people could come from all different groups. And I also have to say, they don't have to belong to any religion at all. I'm sure you can have heartfelt people who would describe themselves as atheists. I've got no problem with that, because it is actually the connection between people that warrants a real spirituality to me. An atheist might not like to use the word spirituality, but I think that's what it would be, even if they labelled themselves as atheist. And by the way, I think people who label themselves atheists have got a mistaken idea about what people who believe in, quote, God or divinity, whatever word you like to use, the way they think about it. They are atheists because they don't believe in the old man up in the sky giving the rules. And neither do I. So in that sense, I'm an atheist. But I believe in a spiritual connection between people. And that's what I mean by heartfelt, being a person who empathizes and allows whatever spiritual practice they want to engage with to focus on how they can stay open to other people, whatever group they belong to. And the Cathars the modern Cathars and the old Cathars may have been very special people. On the other hand, as soon as one group of people do label themselves and enclose themselves in a particularly restrictive kind of format for lifestyle and so forth, then there's a danger there that restriction can close the heart to a certain extent. But we can have a think about that in deeper ways in future videos. But in the meantime, let's wonder whether 2021 will actually bring something forward which might fulfill Guillaume's prophecy that good people, or as I say, heartfelt people, will return. He uses the word return, but I would say make themselves present, because I think they're already here. So keep meditating, because that will keep you in touch with your heart. And that's a non-religious thing to do. It doesn't have to belong to any religious tendency or but you could be secular and still meditate and keep your heart open. So keep meditating and keep shining. Keep shining.
She's right. We are here. We're definitely here. They knew we were coming too, because they knew about the reincarnation thing. She also talked about the laurel reef and being green again. You know, something that Gabriel always told me many times. We are the unsung heroes. I know I mentioned that in past videos. One more video to share. I've got, there's many here, but this is two women that did this very same video in Espanol, and they did it in English. It's amazing.
Kind of convenient. Hi, on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming. Today we have the company of Marisa Ventura in this space that has been called the Cathar prophecy. Will it be fulfilled in 2021? Marisa Ventura is a licensed in political science. She is a published author, speaker, and researcher. Let's not delay this any further and let's welcome Marisa Ventura. Marisa, again, welcome to Mindalia. How are you doing today?
Hi, Mirna, how are you? Well, as usual, it's my pleasure to be here today with the Mindalia, where I believe it is my house, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to continue talking about the Cathars, about Mary Magdalene, and the beautiful legacy that they developed for all of us. So it's really my pleasure to be here today with you and all the audience that is here.
It is also our pleasure, Marisa. Thank you for accepting the invitation of doing this in a different language that is not ours. We are thrilled to have you. We are going to be sharing something that we shared previously in Spanish. We don't want to keep that for ourselves. We want to do the effort and cross and have the chance to just say it in a different language and maybe in a couple more. Why not, right?
Of course. You know, first of all, I would like to apologize because, as you already mentioned, it's not my mother tongue. It's not the English. It's a second language.
Ours.
But I will try to, and I will try to do my best because, as you mentioned, it's important to put in the universe this prophecy and the message that this prophecy has for us.
It is a very interesting, important, and relevant prophecy, especially these days. We truly believe that. And let's start by, it is called the Cathar prophecy. So why not start asking you, you are the researcher and you are the expert on the field, who were the Cathars? Is there a connection to some particular character that we are very fond of?
Yes, I agree. Okay, let me tell you that much has been written and speculated about the Cathars. And let me tell you that the Cathars were really a fascinating and enigmatic spiritual group in medieval times. They live in the south of France. Between 11th and 12th centuries, they live in the area or the region that it's called Languedoc or Occitania. It's a beautiful region in the south of France. And as we know, they were the descendant of this character that you already mentioned, that it's Mary Magdalene. They were really the descendant of the teachings that Mary Magdalene brought to this region in the south of France, the original teachings of Jesus Christ. I want to start also telling you that the word Cathars came from the Greek katharoi. And katharoi means pure. You know that when we say that we can do catharsis, also came from the Cathar people. And to make this catharsis is to make a purification. They were called the pures, but they called themselves just good women and good men, because they also call themselves simply Christians in order to differentiate from the Catholic Church, because they have, we will see, a different belief or a different put in practice of this spirituality. We know that according to the tradition, Mary Magdalene arrives to the shores of Marseille in the south of France, more in a tiny town that is called Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mer, after Jesus' resurrection. And from here is where she started her ministry and where she spread all these original teachings of Jesus. The Cathar were a community of people, very, very pacific. They were kind people, serene. They were a generous group of people. And you know, they had a lot of spiritual and material prosperity. And why is that? Well, because first of all, because they shared their belongings, they helped the poor, they feed the people in need. They had really a big heart. They were a very, very pacific. And I want to emphasize that because they really were a very nice people. They were respectful. They live in community with nature. They practice the meditation. They were mostly vegan because they respect all the life on earth. So they have a different mind for that time. They were really a society that we can consider that they were advanced because they took care of the environment, they took care of the planet, they make all their meditations outside in contact with nature. They were really a different kind of people. And they had something special that bothered and challenged the church. And what was that? Was that the Cathars believed that the church was not necessary to be in contact with God. They insisted in a one-on-one connection, in a mystical experience, and they say, we do not need the church. If we want to be in contact with God, we direct talk to them. And imagine at that time, was difficult to have this speech and this spirit. But the Cathars added more and more followers every single day, and the church started really feeling very, very challenged about the Cathars because this way of life, the way of living they had, and the church in this part of the south of France didn't have any kind of influence. You know, something that it's nice also to mention, because the life of the Cathar, in some point when the church decided, that I will tell you later, this bloody crusade, they live in the same period that live the troubadours. They were song writers, singers, the Kabbalists, the mystic, the Jewish mystics, Muslims. In the south of France, the church didn't have any kind of influence because the south of France has many, many meeting points with Byzantium. And they live in environment that were extremely peaceful between all different religious or spiritual influences. So this is like to understand a little bit who were these people. They were very pacific. They believe and continue the legacy that Mary Magdalene brought to the south of France. And really the church saw its authority very questioned in this area and immediately listed them as a heresy. So was difficult at that time.
It looks like a very difficult, interesting time, just to say a word. And for what I understand, also they embodied the teachings of Jesus himself, or the teachings of a
Yes.
very good-natured spirituality. It wasn't only talking, they were actually living their purposes. The church systematically erased them because they represented, of course, huge, a competitor.
Yes,
And
of
I
course.
have even heard that sometimes their own executioners refuse to kill them because they said, like, I can't have anything against them. And that brings me to my next question, Marisa. I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you about what happened to them and why.
Yeah. Well, it's as you already mentioned, many people, including the people that should bring them to the fire, to the big bonfire, start feeling comfortable listening to them. And you know, there are chronicles and stories of this period that the people that when they had to express themselves before go to the fire, they said, we never heard most beautiful people with these more beautiful feelings and more Christians than the Cathar. And there is something important and something that it's difficult for me to understand. You know what? The Church of Rome cataloged them as the Jewish movement in the Languedoc. They were not Jewish. However, they followed the teaching of a Jewish woman that was Mary Magdalene. And also,
A Jewish woman that was Mary Magdalene. Hmm. Yeah. And I go back to thoughts of Mount Moriah, the cemetery where my family's buried. It's a Jewish Freemason resting place full of Egyptian and Sumerian iconography, even down to pyramids on the top of the building and the winged disc that represents the ships. Hello, hubby wubby.
Hello. How you
He
doing?
just got up.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Mhm.
Hi. Past lives are a thing. Also, let me remind you about the year 2012. This year is 2021, the inversion of 2012. According to what the cards told me, the Mayan calendar ended this year, not 2012. Mm-hmm. At least that's what the cards indicated. Yeah. You can be sure that I'm going to share that first video that I showed you with my counselor. For sure.
Bra company is revolutionizing the market with this reusable sticky bra.
Notice the flag has a dove on it. You know what the dove represents? Not just peace, but it represents the goddess.
The year of the Cathar. Now that we're here in 2021, we will see the revival of the Cathar Church in its fullest. Up till this point, we've had hardly any developments, so to speak. Peace be with you all. Welcome to the year of the Cathar. This year we begin our wonderful journey to a full reinstation of the Cathar Church. And my inspiration to dub the new movement the Orthodox Cathar Church back in April of 2019 was a way of bringing the idea to people's minds that this was the kind of the main way, the mainstream, truest form of Catharism that one could find. And I suppose I did not stress enough over the past couple years that it's only in 2021, and more specifically autumn of 2021, that we will find our fullness to be reinstated. So, as I spoke about on the Western Christmas Day last month, we will see the prophecy fulfilled. We will see that the greening of the laurel will come in autumn 2021, and we await that with anticipation of the kind that I think few would understand. And it's important to remember that we have a spiritual purpose here. We're not here on this earth just to experience life. We're here to elevate ourselves, to return to the Father, to be prepared to do so. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about the year of the Cathar and what I'll be doing, what I shall do in the coming months after this video. I will be working a lot on the website. I will be working a lot on podcasts and videos and things of that nature. I'm looking for partners. I'm looking for people who have heard the call of perfection and will come forward to be perfected. It's going to be a busy year. It's going to be a time of great change, not only in ourselves but in the broader world. Things we've never seen before will happen, where there will be a lot of tribulation per se, but in that there will be a flowering of the people of the Lord. And that's something I think is important to understand as well. Our mission here is not to proselytize or to go out and gather in people who are not Cathar. Our mission is to find the Cathars. And so when if you choose to do, or if you are called to do some sort of mission work, whether that's simply discussing the Cathar way with people you know, keep that in mind. There are very few Cathars out here, and we obviously have come back. Myself and you watching, listening, who feels that pull to Montségur. And that's another thing as well. Within the next couple of years, we will be, as we gather more, there will be opportunities to return home on this earth. You know, our home is truly Montségur. All Cathars, even if you were not killed there back in the Middle Ages, or whether or not you ever, I think, step foot there at any time, it is a beacon to to us, to our people. So that's something that I've been feeling my mind's drawn back to constantly is Montségur. And so if you have any questions, if you're still searching, you're finding out what this is all about, you can email me. I'm getting back into emails this new year, today actually, as of the first of the year. I'll be replying to emails, questions, comments. I'll be getting back to things I've been planning to work on. It's a new time to awaken. It's not just a new year, and it's not just a turning of a calendar. It is truly the year of the Cathar. So I will leave you with that, and as always, I leave you with peace and truth and light, and I pray that you all are well and that you will see this year that your spiritual labor has borne great fruits. So I will see you soon. Peace be with you.
You could see the angst he had in the beginning of the video. I feel his worry that it won't happen, but I can assure him it will. So, do you feel that calling? If you do, you should definitely check out the links I'm going to leave in the description below with links to all these videos. And we need to start networking heavily. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, prophecy, revelations. Those of you that are new to the channel, I hope you visit some of those past videos. It was my journey to my awakening. They wanted me to document everything, and I did. Pretty much near everything. There were some things I didn't share, but I've pretty much shared most of it. Vast majority. 99.5%. But yeah, I will leave links. It is the Great Awakening, the Age of Aquarius. It's all about divine timing. Have a very grand weekend, all of you. And I'll talk to you soon. Remember, links are in the description. Don't believe me. Check things for yourself. Later.